Well, the sun has set on Volition after nearly 30 years, or just about 30 years of development. A sad way for that company to go down. So, a little history about Volition, real quick. I got this off Wikipedia, by the way. Some of it I knew about, some of it I didn't. And by the way, obviously, I'm not using Saints Row in name only B-roll. I didn't feel like re-downloading that game for this video. So, sorry, not sorry. Okay, so originally Volition started off in 1993 as Parallax Software Company and eventually changed names a couple times, mainly keeping the Volition name, like Volition, Deep Silver Volition. There was a few video game franchises that they made or were responsible for, including Descent, Free Space, Summoner, Red Faction, Agents of Mayhem in 2017, which was like a one-and-done type game. And then, of course, the big one, Saints Row, which is what we're going to talk about today. Over on Volition's website, they put out this official announcement yesterday evening. Quote unquote, the Volition team has proudly created world-class entertainment for fans around the globe for 30 years. We've been driven by passion for our community and always work to deliver joy, surprise, and delight. This past June, the Embracer Group, the parent company, announced a restructuring program, strengthening Embracer and maintaining its position as leader in the video game industry. As part of that program, they evaluated strategic and operational goals that made the difficult decision to close Volition effective immediately. To help our team, we are working to provide job assistance, smooth the transition for our Volition family members. We thank our customers and fans around the world and all the love and support over the years. You will always be in our hearts. On one end, I do feel bad for all the employees of Volition that is affected by this announcement, by the official closing of Volition. I hope that most of them end up finding other jobs within other studios in the Embracer Group. I think that a lot of Volition was already moved over to Gearbox, if I'm not mistaken. But it's sad because I think a lot of this could have been avoided. So we're going to talk specifically about Saints Row because that's the franchise that they came out with that I'm most familiar with. And that started off pretty good, but ended up being Volition's undoing because of terrible decisions. Saints Row, the original game, launched in 2006. Then its sequel, which is, I guess, the most popular of the Saints Row franchise, Saints Row 2, that came out in 2008. So there was like a 2-year gap of production in between the two games. 3 years later, they would come out with Saints Row the Third in 2011. And then another 2 years later, right before the release of GTA 5, they would come out with Saints Row 4, which was a slight departure from the previous Saints Rows. It involved a bit of superpowers, and I kind of enjoyed Saints Row 4. I got into Saints Row with Saints Row the Third, and I know there were Saints Row fans of 1 and 2 that didn't really care as much for some of the changes in Saints Row the Third, but I thought it was okay for what it was. But then, unfortunately, their parent company at that time, THQ, filed for bankruptcy. That kind of screwed the pooch. I don't know if they were trying to save the company with Saints Row 4. I think that was the case. I watched a video about that some time ago. And, of course, Gat Out of Hell. I did play Gat Out of Hell a long time ago. So there was a long span from Saints Row 4 to the next game that Volition would work on, which was Agents of Mayhem, which was kind of a spin-off of Saints Row, but it flopped big time. That came out in 2017. So I would say that Volition's downfall had already begun some time ago, and some people would make the argument that it began with Saints Row the Third, or at least with Saints Row 4, or perhaps even Agents of Mayhem, because they went in a completely different direction. They were trying something new. It was kind of connected to Saints Row, but it was also its own thing. Obviously, it did not pan out for Volition. So that was a pretty big flop for them back in 2017. And then 5 years later, they came out with Saints Row 2022, Saints Row Reboot, Saints Row in name only. And it also flopped. So there was a lot of bad decisions being made by the heads of Volition over the past two projects that ultimately sealed this company's fate. They had a chance to make a proper reboot of Saints Row that really could have competed with the GTA franchise. Maybe it would have never toppled Grand Theft Auto. I think that there's no game out there that can when it comes to open world crime games. But here's the reality. GTA fans have been thirsty for a rival open world crime game for a while, because this game that I'm playing right now, which is, well, GTA Online, obviously connected with GTA 5, it came out almost a decade ago. And 16 days from now, September 17th, will be the 10-year anniversary of GTA 5. And then October 1st is the 10-year anniversary of GTA Online. And we've been waiting a decade for another GTA game. Rockstar's working on another GTA, allegedly GTA 6. We've seen some leaked information about it, but no official announcement regarding Grand Theft Auto 6. And speculation is we might get a teaser finally this year, hopefully, and it might release in fall 2024 or 2025. In other words, Volition had a window of opportunity to craft a legit rival open world crime game, but dropped the waffle maker big time with Saints Row in name only. This was a horrible game. Not this game that I'm playing, obviously. The game that we're talking about. So they spent, what we found out was $100 million on Saints Row in name only. And if we go by the time span from Agents of Mayhem to Saints Row in name only, at least 4 or 5 years of development. In most cases, you could usually make a decent AAA game in 4 or 5 years. Not the case with Volition. And despite that, Saints Row in name only clearly needed more time in the oven. It had major bugs, glitches, crashes. I mean, those waffles they came out with were just far from done. And they didn't even taste good. They were kind of drippy and not even properly cooked. And it's sad because everything about the game was horrible. Everything. The game itself sucked. The mechanics weren't the best. And the writing, the writing was bad. Really, really bad. The story, terrible. A few funny jokes here and there. Nothing compared to previous Saints Row games. I would say Saints Row the Third, way more entertaining. And I would even say Saints Row 4 was even more entertaining, along with the characters of previous Saints Row. And speaking of the characters of Saints Row in name only, most of them were mediocre except for maybe Nawali, but they did screw up his character as well. He was ultimately the main antagonist, and I didn't have a problem with him being the main antagonist. It's the way they did it. So this is a spoiler, and if you don't want to be spoiled about Saints Row in name only, then you may want to pause the video, come back after you play Saints Row in name only. I think it's going to be free on PlayStation Plus soon, so I think that's a price tag I can agree with when it comes to Saints Row.
I'd buy that for $1.
But okay, so now that's out of the way. Spoilers. Nawali ends up being the main antagonist, even though you help him earlier in the game. And he kind of becomes friends with the Santa Elsa Saints, or whatever they're called, the Saints in name only. And he decides to betray you. Your character is the boss. And he betrays you. Why? Because he wants your friends. Your pathetic friends. Of all the reasons to stab you in the back and leave you for dead in a shallow grave, it's because of your worthless friends. You could find better friends walking down the street than those clowns. I would have understood him betraying you if, all the rival factions that you were up against decided to combine forces and put a bounty on your head, and Nawali decided, you know what, I like you, but money is money. And they're all offering me money, and the Marshall Group is offering me, extradition, or the ability to get out of the country, or maybe a partner, or some nonsense, right? I'm just doing this off the top of my head. See, that would have been a legitimate reason for Nawali to turn on you. Not because he wanted your friends for himself. I mean, he technically already had them as friends. But he also had you as a friend. So it was kind of pointless for Nawali to betray you if that was his reasoning for betraying you. Because you were already friends with everybody, Nawali. But yeah, just another prime example of how pathetic the writing was and the characters. And the city itself, I know some people actually like Santa Elsa, which I guess is kind of loosely based off of Las Vegas. But I was not a fan of Santa Elsa, and if I'm mispronouncing it, I don't care. It's no Stillwater and it's no Stillport. I know most people prefer Stillwater. If they were to reboot Saints Row, they should have just gone back to Stillwater, and they should have brought back the original characters like Johnny Gat and a few others like Shondi, etc. That's what they should have done, or like Pierce and one or two others. But that's what they needed to do, was make this like a legit open world crime game. That's what most Saints Row fans wanted. That's what a lot of GTA fans were hoping for as well, because I'm a firm believer in competition. As much as I love the Grand Theft Auto franchise, I don't mind having other awesome open world crime games out there to compete with it, because it gives us another game to play and go enjoy, especially with the long wait for the next GTA, which could be a year or two from now at the earliest. And the fact that Rockstar has become complacent. They've become lazy. And they're at the top of the mountain, and there's nothing to compete with them. So they don't have to push the envelope. And it shows. If they actually had like a Volition with an amazing Saints Row to have launched in 2022, or maybe a year later, like this year, that had better writing, better characters, better everything, and more time in the oven, and beautiful, amazing $300 waffles, then perhaps it would be getting rave reviews all across the board. And that was another thing. The social media push by Volition and Saints Row was pathetic. They were trying to be edgy. They were like, haters gonna hate. And it didn't exactly go so well for them, because they were all out. Well, just wait till the game comes out. It's going to be amazing. It was amazingly bad. But at the same time, I do feel bad for all the hardworking developers and everybody involved in Volition that were just doing their jobs. They weren't the ones that made the decisions. It was people above them, managers, head writers, etc., that decided to take the Saints Row franchise in this direction. It was a bad call, a bad move. But I think this was just the final nail in the coffin. It wasn't the only nail. As we talked about a moment ago, a few years prior, Agents of Mayhem bombed as well. So that didn't help Volition either. But anyways, it's sad. A 30-year-old studio is gone the way of the dodo. And it deserved better. And so did the Saints Row franchise. And hopefully Gearbox will try to reboot Saints Row somewhere down the road. And maybe they'll learn from the mistakes made by this Volition team when it came to what they ended up doing with Saints Row in name only. Because, yeah, right now people will be raving about that Saints Row game, playing the hell out of it. And they could have added an online component to it. And they could have made it a profit-making engine. A lot of us would have been more than happy to jump over and started playing Saints Row and maybe Saints Row Online if it was done right. But it was half-assed. It was lazy. It was rushed out the door despite apparently having 4 or 5 years of production. And $100 million wasted on that game. You go and play that game and you look at it and you're asking yourself, where exactly did that $100 million go to? Did it go towards the low-res cat? I don't know. I know it didn't go to the voice actors, because voice actors are not exactly paid that much. And some of them actually did some good voice acting. And it's not their fault that the lines suck. It's the writing that failed the voice actors. So I don't blame the voice actors at all, because they're just doing their job. And they're hired to go into the studio and record these lines. And they did the best of what they had to work with, which wasn't much. But yeah, big giant fail regarding Saints Row reboot. We talked about it a few times over the past year. I did like one Saints Row stream that I bounced. And my fiance, Riley Blackfox, she decided to take my account and endure it herself. And of course, another friend of ours, Pat, the professional, he did a video as well. I'm going to watch his video after I'm done with my video because, well, I didn't want to unintentionally like copy pasta his thoughts. I know we have some similar opinions, Pat and me, but I decided to put my video out before watching his, FYI. So see, not only am I a creator and a streamer, I also like to watch fellow creators and streamers as well. So that's one of the reasons why I love this platform for the most part. But anyways, yeah, it's sad what happened with Volition. And things could have gone better with the right leadership, the right decisions, better writing, better characters, more time in the oven for Saints Row 2022. Even if they decide to keep Santa Elso, it still needed more time in the oven because it had lots of issues, and a lot of us know how that was received. But anyways, I guess that's pretty much all I got to say about Volition. Your thoughts, views, and opinions regarding Volition, Saints Row in name only, or whatever else you want to talk about, as always, welcome below in the comments section.